Illegal heroin labs were first discovered near Marseille, France in 1937. These labs were run by Corsican gang leader Paul Carbone. For years, the Corsican underworld had been involved in the manufacturing and trafficking of heroin, primarily to the United States, and this operation lasted from the 1930s until the 1970s. This heroin network was eventually known as the French Connection. The first significant post-World War II seizure of heroin was made in New York City on February 5, 1947, when 7 pounds or 3 kilograms of heroin was seized from a Corsican sailor disembarking from a vessel that had just arrived from France. The raw heroin trade had traditionally been shipped to the U.S. from the Union Corse from Indochina, but the post-World War II world had the gang decide to ship from Indochina to Turkey, then to France, and eventually to the United States. The first major French Connection seizure in the 1960s began in June when an informant told a drug agent in Lebanon that Marcio Rosal, the Guatemalan ambassador to Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, was smuggling morphine base from Beirut to Marseille, and narcotics agents had been seizing about 200 pounds of heroin in a typical year, but intelligence showed that the Corsican traffickers were smuggling in 200 pounds every other week. Rosal alone in 1 year had used his diplomatic status to bring about 440 pounds of heroin in, and this was a major blow to the French Connection, as well as a major intelligence bust. The morphine base, which was derived from the cultivation of poppies, was smuggled in from Turkey by boat before being transformed into heroin by the local French chemists. And from there on, it was shipped to its final destination, being the large growing American market. Heroin produced at the time in Marseille was 98% pure. By the early 1960s, around 80% of the heroin consumed in the United States had been smuggled in by France, and by the early 1970s, that number was up to 90%. In February of 1972, French narco-traffickers offered a United States Army sergeant $96,000, which in 1972 that would be equivalent to $699,000 in 2023, to smuggle 240 pounds of heroin into the United States. This sergeant informed his superior, who turned in and notified the BNDD, and as a result of this investigation, 5 men in New York and 2 in Paris were arrested with 264 pounds of heroin, which had been having a street value of $50 million. The actions of this single sergeant had caused a major blow to the French narco-traffickers. In a 14-month period that started in February, 6 major illicit heroin labs were seized and dismantled in the suburbs of Marseille by French National Narcotics Police in collaboration with agents from the US DEA. On February 29th, French authorities seized a shrimp boat as it was put to sea near Marseille, heading towards Miami. This boat was carrying 915 pounds of heroin, and drug arrests in France skyrocketed from only 57 people having been arrested in 1970 to 3,016 arrests being made in 1972. The French Connection was completely dismantled in the 1970s, but drug cartels in Mexico and Colombian cartels stepped in to fill the void left by the French, and narcotics continued to flow into the United States, especially from Colombia with the rise of Pablo Escobar, the Medellin cartel, and the cocaine boom. Did you know about the French Connection and French heroin trade into the United States during the war on drugs? Are there other elements that I should have talked about more of? Write in the comments, and thank you for watching.